So glad you're joining me today. This is The Chat, and I'm glad you have come. In fact, if you have never come and been a part of our program, you picked a very interesting day to be a part of our program, because we are going to talk about something that I think is going to be very interesting for you, but it's also going to cause you to raise your eyebrow just a little bit. Either way, I'm glad that you joined me. I'm Priscilla, and The Chat is our opportunity to do just that. To chat about some stuff that matters in your life, or should matter in your life, that you should be thinking about, because our culture is thinking about it and introducing it. And today we have one of those topics that we're going to be discussing. Have you heard about the book 50 Shades of Grey? If you haven't, I'm sure that your daughter has, your niece has, your mom has, your neighbor, she has heard of it. 40 million women have read this book, and it is on the hot topic of sexuality. And so we're kind of getting a little raw today on the program. It's going to be an exciting show. You are not going to want to miss even 1 minute of it. So stay tuned. It's going to be good. Very intriguing topic that we're going to tackle today, and let me just tell you this. We have lots of wonderful web shows that are for every age, every season of life. You know, if you have your daughter and you want to pull her in, we have shows that are appropriate for that. This might not be the one that young ears need to hear. So I want you to make a wise decision even right now before we dive into this topic about whether or not your daughter or your niece or a young person in your life needs to watch this particular program, because we are talking about a very hot topic. There's a little book called 50 Shades of Grey, and as I mentioned, 40 million women plus have read this book. In fact, this is one of the fastest selling books of all time. I think that it has sold even faster than the Harry Potter series, and you know how many millions of people have either seen that in the movie or they have read it in books. And so we got to talk about this because it addresses the topic of sexuality, and women are devouring this book. What is it teaching us? What is it telling us? Is it appropriate? And do we have any business reading this book? To help us answer that question, we have a couple sisters who are with us who are going to help us to kind of do a little bit of business with the 50 Shades of Grey. And so this is Dana Gres. Would you please make welcome Miss Dana?
Thank you. Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you're here. We call both of these ladies sexperts because they have made it their business to study sexuality, and a woman who wants to honor God with her body and honor her marriage and be faithful to her marriage. Dana has done that. Her website is purefreedom.org, and she really deals a lot with single women and how they can make sure they are protecting their bodies and their minds, body, soul, and spirit, being prepared for the man that God has for them, and then honoring God. Thank you so much for being with us, Dana, and helping us to understand all this. And then there's Miss Julie Slattery. Will you please help me to make Julie welcome? Julie and I first encountered each other at Focus on the Family, where she worked for many years. Even before that, though, as a clinical psychologist, you would deal a lot one-on-one with people in your practice, and she really has made it her business to study sexuality as well, and to study it in the scriptures, but also to study it in the culture. So you're going to help us to make come to grips with some of this material as well. So I got to be honest with you, I have not read through this book. I've just chosen not to do that, and I just wanted you guys to know that just because I'm holding it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily endorsing it, but I wanted you to see what folks are running into at the Sam's Club down the street, or the Barnes & Noble, or the Walmart. This is what they're looking at. Why have 40 million plus women read this book? What's the draw?
I think it's scratching an itch.
Okay.
And it might not be the right way to scratch it, but it's definitely meeting what they think is a need, or it is meeting, they think it's meeting a need. And there might be different opinions on what that need is, but women are saying that it's livening up their sex life, and it probably is, at least for a short period of time. Barbara Walters on The View said that women are reading it because what they really crave in their lives and they can't find anywhere is a strong man.
Oh, and so they're finding it in this book.
And they think they're finding a strong man in this book.
Okay. Julie, tell us what the book is about, because for someone like me, honestly, it was just in the last couple months that I was even introduced to the book. I had no idea. I'd never heard of it. I didn't know what it was about. So for folks who had never heard of 50 Shades of Grey, what's in the book? What's it about?
Oh, well, I'll give a disclaimer as well that I haven't read the book, and actually there are 3 books that go in this series, but I've read enough to know what the storyline is, and that's all I want to know. I really don't want it in my head. But the essence of the book is that a young woman meets this dashing older man and falls in love immediately, and within the first week of them knowing each other, he has her sign basically a contract saying, you have to give me permission to do whatever I want to you. And then
Sexually.
yes, and so it unfolds that this includes a lot of bondage, a lot of harmful sexual and perverted practices. There's a red room of pain that he takes her into to engage in some of these behaviors. So it's a very twisted love story. My understanding that the critics have said it's actually not very well written, but it is, as Dana said, it is really getting into a need and issues that women have down deep inside that no one's addressing.
Yeah.
And this author has tapped into that. I don't think by accident. I really think there's something very spiritual going on here.
Yeah. Dr. Drew Pinsky says it's pathological and poorly written. Those are probably 2 things you don't want written about your book, right?
Yeah. Okay, so I've got to ask you, if you've chosen not to read it, if you haven't read it, then what gives you the authority to talk about it if you haven't read it?
Well, you know, I've studied sexuality for about 15 years now, and a very big part of that has been studying the impact of pornography as well as erotica. We don't have as much research on the impact of erotica as we do pornography, but I think a lot of the same conclusions would qualify for those 2 categories. And categorically, pornography and erotica, while it might initially create this new passion and this new interest in sexuality, even perhaps with your husband, over the course of time, it draws you away from intimacy with a person. It draws you away from intimacy and from sexuality. In fact, New York Magazine ran an article, obviously not from a Christian perspective at all, and found that men who used porn were less likely to be interested in sex with a real partner, but when they fasted from porn, they suddenly were interested in a real person again. I think what you'll find is that it creates an initial interest. The fact that it's not an external addiction, but one that your body is creating, means that your body can't sustain the arousal level. It's a neurochemical addiction. And so what it eventually ends up in creating is not a desire for more, but a desire for different.
That's interesting.
So,
so not more, you want different now.
Different, yes, you're going to want something different. Very harmful to the intimacy between a husband and a wife.
Okay. Everything you just described that this book is about, all of that, the whole red room of pain, all that stuff, none of that sounds exciting to me. There's nothing about that that makes me go, oh, I want that. So why, what would draw a woman who wants intimacy and love and to feel passion and to feel, satisfied and fulfilled in her sexual relationship with her spouse, what would make them excited about reading stuff like that?
Well, we've just kind of given you the broad brush,
Okay.
But if you get into the book, which again, I'm not recommending anybody do, and I've chosen not to do, there are very erotic passages. Okay. And just like a man looking at pornography, women are wired to connect more emotionally through a storyline, actually through literature that heightens that arousal. Mm-hmm. And you have chemicals in your body that are designed to respond. Now, God created us with all different kinds of chemicals that are flying around our head and our bodies during sexual intercourse. Some of those are designed to come into play when there's new and exciting love. And those are really the chemicals that draw us to each other and draw us into this lifetime commitment of marriage. I mean, you remember that puppy love. You remember just not being able to think about anything else except for this man that you're so in love with. If we didn't have those chemicals, we'd probably never get married.
Yeah. And are those the chemicals that we wish we had 3 months,
oh,
3 years, 30 years
later?
Never
survive them throwing the socks on the floor without the chemicals. Right. Let's just be real about it.
But those chemicals are designed to only last a couple months, really. And there are times, I know, but there are times in marriage where you can get them back slightly. But God gave us other chemicals for marriage, like oxytocin and like chemicals that are feel-good chemicals, that life is well and I'm at peace and I can sleep and I can rest and I can actually endure pain better and stress better than I could.
Because of companionship.
Yes. So those are the chemicals that really sustain a marriage long term. But what happens is that we can get so addicted to that high. Give me something new, give me something exciting, give me something dangerous with adrenaline. And pornography, and this is a form of pornography, are designed to hook us on that high. And as Dana said, what worked last week will not work this week.
You need more.
And it becomes addictive.
Different.
And we also then can't enjoy the deep, bonding, committed sexual love that God designed us to have, that is supposed to only get better with time.
Right. You know, I think a lot of women are not aware of what they're getting into when they read the book. It's such a buzzword right now, and I know that my best friend called me and she said, my 70-year-old mom has her name at the library to loan 50 Shades of Grey out. I mean, she just had no idea. She just knew everybody was reading it. A lot of women I've counseled with who are devastated by the impact that it's had in their heart and their minds are saying, I just didn't know, but once I got into the book, I couldn't stop reading it.
Because they were hooked on that feeling, that
the
sense.
chemicals.
Okay. I want to bring a little bit of balance to this, because the reality is you guys have studied sexuality and the culture and all that stuff, but you're wives too. I mean, you're women who have sexual needs, sexual desires.
Did you just say that on a Christian radio talk show?
I
right
did,
here?
girl. I said it.
You're talking about Dana and I.
Oh, yeah. Come on, Julie.
I'm a doctor.
I'll own it. I own it.
We all do, don't we?
Yes, we do.
And the reality is, I don't think that Christian women in particular are talking about it. Really,
No.
we're not just owning the fact we have sexual needs, sexual desires, and that we want that you know, all the little chemicals you were just talking about. We want that feeling. We want to be fulfilled in our romantic relationship. So how do we balance the healthy need to be fulfilled sexually? Okay, here's the deal. A lot of Christian women, a lot of my friends that I have talked to that are married, they are kind of half enjoying sex with their husband. It's not like what they enjoy is being in his arms. They enjoy that connection. But in terms of sex itself, being exciting and thrilling and bringing them to a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment, they're not quite getting all of that in there. I mean, you know, it's just kind of, you know, they can kind of take or leave the sex part. As long as they're kind of laying in his chest and they get that closeness, that's what works for them. But as we know, that does not just work for the husband. So they go through with the whole thing, but for them, sex isn't, it just isn't totally fulfilling. So,
and God created them to love it. God, it's a gift from God. So I would say there's probably two things that are really important. And I'll just fall on my sword and say that I've been that woman. You know, I've been in that place. And the Lord really had to do two things for me. One was I had to go through some sexual healing. Because if you have sexual brokenness in your past, whether it's something that you did when you were 15, or you struggled with erotica, or you struggled with porn, you can't enjoy the holy connection that God's created for your marriage bed unless there's healing in that part of you. And He did a deep, deep work of healing in my heart. But then several years ago, I frankly came to Julie and I said, Julie, there's this part in our
who
marriage.
hasn't come to Julie? We all go to Julie.
I need help, Dr. Julie. And I just said, you know, there's part of our marriage that's not working. And I think there's a stigma sometimes for Christians that marriage counseling or even sexual therapy is not a good thing. I wish we could call it marriage coaching.
Yeah.
Praise Jesus. The Greses have had a lot of marriage coaching. And I'm so thankful. And so we went to Julie, and got
it's
advice
like tuning
from
up
her.
your car, isn't it? It's like you can't, it doesn't just run on one good tune-up at the beginning of the year. There are a couple of times maybe throughout the year you got to get the oil changed, you got to get, you know, you got to stop at the gas station and get the gas tank filled up. Doesn't mean anything's broken. It just means to keep it running smoothly, you take it in every
And
once in a
sometimes
while.
it is broken. In me, there was a broken piece of me. And Julie advised me, and I went to the resources of Clifford and Joyce Penner, phenomenal Christian sex therapists. They have written resources, they do counseling, and man, the Lord brought back the chemical factory. I mean, He just fixed it. And the chemical factory is alive and well. And we shouldn't be afraid as Christian women to go to solid Christian resources to fix that which ails us.
Or even not even Christian women, just women who were taught up to, grew up to be and reared to be good girls, and what that meant was kind of ignoring the sexual part of you. And I think that's part of what this book has done. It's invited the sexual part out that has been hindered in so many women for so long. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it is we've been taught, whether it's in a church setting or just our society, that sex is about men. And a good wife will understand her husband's sexual needs and meet those needs. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but that's not all God created sex for. He created it for women. And a woman's sexuality is far more difficult to discover. It's far more complicated. So what ends up happening in most cases is that the sexual relationship within marriage revolves around the man's needs. It revolves around when he's ready, what he wants, and the woman adopts this attitude of, okay, this is my wifely duty, or I'm tired of this, or I don't count. What 50 Shades of Grey and other things like that have done is they've given women permission to be sexual. And unfortunately, the church has not done that. Our culture as a whole, in terms of morality, hasn't done that. But if you look in the Bible, in one of St. Paul's letters, 1 Corinthians 7, it talks about how we're not supposed to withhold our bodies from each other when we're married. And it starts with the woman's needs. It says, ladies, your body is your husband's, but it says first, your husband's body is yours, and he's supposed to please you. So you have God's word saying women are sexual. They have sexual needs.
He wants to speak sweetly to you through his Spirit. He wants to give you the comfort that only he can offer. He's the one in the blink of an eye that can change everything. You are supposed to personally have a relationship with him. He wants to reignite the fire of your relationship with him this weekend. The greatest miracle he can perform is in your own heart and in your own mind, not necessarily in your circumstances. It's in you. Oh, this is going to be good. I got a feeling about this one. Anybody got a feeling? I want you to know that your God is able, that he can. Have you not heard? Have you not heard? So you're saying that there's nothing wrong with a woman discovering and utilizing her sexuality within marriage. You're just saying that 50 Shades of Grey and resources like that have introduced it to us the wrong way.
Right. I'm not only saying there's nothing wrong with it, I'm saying there's something very right about it.
Good, Julie.
And sexuality, in some ways, is very spiritual. And there are whole parts of women that I think are just shut down because of woundedness, because they don't have permission. They don't know how to explore sexuality within marriage. And so the world says, well, we'll help you out with that. And they've done it in a very twisted way.
And do you know, Priscilla, what will turn your husband on more? Well, let me say this.
Tell me what will
let
turn
me
him on.
Let me tell you. Being satisfied.
Jerry is going to love you.
That's right.
He's going to love you.
Husbands love, when they truly are in a committed, loving relationship, it turns them on to turn on their wife.
This is true. Yes.
They love to please their wives. It is the greatest turn on. And I think Julie and I were fighting about Song of Solomon in the dressing room. I just have to get that up. Debating theology.
Yes.
And so I might be wrong here, at least according to her. But the book starts out with, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. It's her pursuing the intimate sexual relationship. It's her wanting the pleasure. And we should just, do we agree on that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
yes.
go home tonight and say, baby Jerry, you must kiss me with the kisses of your mouth.
My husband is going to throw his wallet just at you.
I know.
Just, thank you,
I
Dan.
helped her with that. I need some of that too.
Oh, okay, yes. Okay, you both have kept mentioning these two words that in my mind would be the same thing, but I'm assuming they're not. Erotica, pornography. Yeah. Could you tell us what the difference is, if any, between those two things and how 50 Shades fits into that?
Well, I think the point of both of them would be to stimulate, with no point other than to stimulate. And by that I mean that God created sex for stimulation and yet to draw you towards intimacy with another person. Whereas pornography and erotica, the sole purpose is stimulation, self-stimulation, solo sex, if you will. The difference being, though, that pornography involves pictures or videos and erotica would do it solely through written literature.
Okay, so you just brought up something I got to ask about. You said self-stimulation, which brings in our
You wanna
nice
go there?
word masturbation.
You
yes,
just
I'm
said
gonna.
that.
Where I just
Go, girl.
on television.
Aren't you proud of her?
Yes. If you have any letters of complaint, please write them to Dana or Julie. I want to talk about masturbation because a lot of women are dealing with it, and honestly, they don't know what to do with it. They don't know if it in and of itself is necessarily a sin against God. They don't know if they're feeling very guilty for it. Please tell us what to do, because as you mentioned, women are reading the book and then stimulating themselves physically as a result of what happens emotionally and chemically in their bodies because of what they're seeing written down on the page. Talk to us a bit about masturbation for single women. Maybe Dana, you can give us help with this for single women, and then Julie, maybe for married women. What does this look like, and how do we kind of filter all this through?
Well, I think we've got to start out by saying masturbation at a basic level is a physiological thing, like brushing your teeth is, or sneezing. It's something you're doing to your body.
I believe God created sex to be something that brings us together, to be shared between one man and one woman. That was his purpose and his intention. And if you look at the Hebrew language for sex in the Old Testament, the word means to miss the mark. So picture a bullseye, and right in the middle of that bullseye is God's intended best. This is his intention and his purpose. If his purpose is to bring us towards someone, then if you're masturbating and becoming withdrawn into your own self-gratification, then I think it is sin. Now, if it's a tool that is bringing you in the context of marriage closer towards your husband, then it may not be a sin, which is a very complicated territory.
And we bring it before God and just say, okay, is this right or wrong? You take the example of a single woman. Maybe she's been married and then divorced, and she knows what sexuality is. Those desires have been awakened. She's 45 years old. She's saying, God, I don't know how to handle these physical desires, these emotional desires. Is masturbation the best way to fulfill those? Not necessarily, but in some respects, and a lot of experts believe this, as long as it's not enslaving, it can be a form of natural release. Now again,
I give different advice than that.
Okay, go for it. Yes.
Go ahead, Dana.
Well, I work mostly with single women.
Okay.
And I think that where I really agree with Julie is that there is an unhealthy, overly guilty feeling associated often with masturbation. I don't think when someone is enslaved and doing it habitually. I've had a missionary kid, a 19-year-old missionary kid, literally faint in my arms when she finally confessed that she was struggling.
Was carrying it so emotionally.
That's completely overriding the Holy Spirit. So he doesn't give us this spirit of condemnation, but maybe conviction.
And there's more shame with masturbation than with sleeping around.
Yes, absolutely.
Why is that?
I agree.
Why is that?
Because I think it's so hidden, it's so private, and it's this, and whenever there's this secret that no one's addressing, all of a sudden the enemy just gets this hold on you. And there's so much shame. Married women feel incredible shame for masturbation. Again, even more than they would reading 50 Shades of Grey, or more than they would fantasizing or acting out in a sexual affair, which is crazy.
My encouragement is always, I say it this way, sex is not a solo sport. And while there are exceptions, I think, in my opinion, where it draws you towards your husband, I think most of the time, for that single woman prior to marriage, it's not going to do that. It's not going to fulfill that purpose. You know what? Everything hard is usually worth it.
Yeah.
Working out for a 5K run, going from couch to 5K. All my friends are doing that on Facebook. I myself am not. I'm working on the 5K to the couch program. But, it's worth it to cross that finish line and to know how hard you worked for that. I think for a single woman, to be able to say, listen, this high sense of shame and guilt, this is not from God the Father. But his best for you is to do the hard work of pressing your desires towards that wedding night.
And do you think that a lot of dissatisfaction rather, that a lot of women are experiencing in marriage is because of what they did in singleness?
Well, sometimes.
Well, I think almost all of us learned about sex in the context of shame. whether it was sexual abuse or it was acting out sexually or it was masturbation or seeing something you shouldn't have seen. And so our bodies become hardwired to associate sexual pleasure, which is supposed to be good, with shame and guilt. And when you get married, that doesn't go away. So there's a lot of retraining that needs to happen. And a lot of Christian women, I think, because they feel that shame and guilt, they just subconsciously assume, okay, my sexuality is bad. It's wrong to have sexual feelings. It's wrong to enjoy this too much. And they shut that down.
Well, even if they haven't had, there are those exceptional cases where they really have had a beautiful experience of innocence. I was counseling a young woman for premarital counseling, and she was so innocent to it all that she was reading this book that I had given her to her and started telling her dad, "Do you know about orgasm?" I was like, that's probably not an okay conversation with your dad. But that's how innocent she was.
Yeah.
After marriage, though, because she had heard no, 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 no from so many years, she had a hard time saying yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's still associated with shame.
Well,
the
that's
message,
true.
no, 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 I mean, that was really my background.
Right.
And that came with me into marriage.
Yeah.
And the first decade was difficult.
Yeah.
Because when you hear no from the church or from your parents, the association is there's something wrong with this.
But there has to be a no attached to it, but a no kind of coupled with a yes in terms of here is what God has given you your body for, and that you're looking towards and forward to something in terms of how the Lord will allow you to use it in different seasons of your life. Now, let me tell you this. The very first time I was introduced to 50 Shades, it was because a woman in my church who didn't just, show up out of the blue in the past year. She's been a part of our church for a very, very long time. I know for sure she loves the Lord. I know she wants to honor her husband. Great woman. She came to me so excited about this book because she said, "Have you read 50 Shades?" And at the time, I didn't know what it was, just a couple months ago. What in the world is that? She described it to me and she said, "It has totally changed my marriage. We have got so much passion going on and intimacy going on like we have never had going on before." So I want to talk to you a little bit more about that. We've got a part 2 to this program, and what we're going to continue to talk about is what is okay for those of us who want to honor God, we want to honor our husbands, we want to have a passionate, hot, fiery relationship with the man in our life. We're going to talk about what is okay for us to do, what isn't okay, and how we can make sure that not only are our spouses enjoying our sexual relationship, but that we're enjoying it. Because from what we've heard today, sex isn't just for them, it's for us too, for us to be fulfilled and to find satisfaction and enjoyment as well. So we're going to have a great part 2 to this, so you're going to want to hang tight and not miss it. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We have had a great conversation, a great conversation. Thank you. We'll see you next time.